Good morning, early game crew. Rise and shine. We got sports to talk about. I'm Elijah Campbell. He's Preston Thorne. He is Cale Wilson. After the end of this week, I've come to the conclusion that I need to bring a sword to work, or a fake sword, on Friday. That way, when Cale finishes the week, I can knight him an early game member.
Okay.
He can be an official early game crew member by knighting. That's how we do it around here.
Is it because of how yesterday started?
No, it's because you would have done a whole week. Well, technically we weren't here Monday, so it's not like a whole week, but like it's a week. I count it.
Because I remember you said the way that I started yesterday was like a rite of passage.
Well, yes, because you did oversleep to get in for a morning show. It has happened to all of us. That is a rite of passage of doing morning radio. You have not done morning radio until you have experienced that type of panic. So you have gotten your baptism by fire. And I think once you finish the week, I don't know where I can get a prop sword. Or a real one. A real one would work too. I mean,
Real sword.
Yeah, that would be definitely an interesting way of going about it with a real sword.
Preston, you know where I can get a real sword?
Well,
There's probably some sort of Renaissance fair.
We have to talk off air.
Okay.
Or there's probably somewhere in Columbia where a bunch of nerds sell them.
You may call them nerds. I call them dangerous men.
We can talk
Well, it
off
depends.
Yeah, it depends. Either way, I think we're going to have Cale knighted. Maybe we could do it out in Studio 803. That way, everybody can see it and they can sign off on it. So, yes, Cale has been knighted as a member of the early game crew. But the first order of business today, South Carolina gets beat at Florida. Maybe the most predictable outcome of the night. Is it bad that losing by 14 actually surpassed my expectation?
Okay.
Because Florida's got the best front court in college basketball, one of the biggest front courts in college basketball. And the fact that it didn't end up being 20 plus, I thought was surprising, because they bring a level of physicality that you cannot possibly match. And we all saw what happened here just a few short weeks ago at CLA. But I want to look back at the game last night and the game against Alabama, because we really didn't get to it a lot yesterday because of obviously what the women's team did in Baton Rouge. I think takes the headlines.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what we've seen in the last two games, losing at Alabama and then losing at Florida, and losing pretty handily. The other team was in control. At no point in the game did I feel that South Carolina truly threatened Alabama and Florida. Alabama let them hang around a little bit longer. I think this is a reflection of, even if they do play good halves, because I thought there were two good first halves in those games, right? No matter how well you think you play or what strategy you employ, you're not going to win these games against the higher tier teams in the Southeastern Conference.
Yeah, and that's a difficult spot to be in, because you, as a fan, you always want to feel like your team at least has an opportunity to win a game.
Yes.
It could be whether, like they play their B game and you play your A game, you feel like you could win. It does not feel like that against these top-tier teams when you're watching this basketball team. It feels as if it would take a lot more than that for it to win. So that's discouraging, just turning on the game and looking at it, and you see like it's just not going to happen. And as you said, the feeling of thinking no matter what, I mean, it got up to like 20-ish last night.
Yeah.
It got down to like 8 or 9 at a certain point, but there was no threat level.
Yeah, I didn't feel a threat level.
You didn't feel things happening. You didn't feel like, okay, if there's certain things, and it didn't really look like it on the court either.
No. And then when Florida really wanted to put it away, they put it away.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a couple plays in that game where, the one specifically is where Xavier Lee kind of gets the outlet pass in transition. They get a defensive rebound, and I think it was Ruben Chinyulu who just throws it out to Xavier Lee, because that's what Florida does. They get out fast. You read the scouting report. They want to get out in that break. They want to play fast. Xavier Lee gets out in the open court and just throws a lob, and Alex Condon goes up and dunks it. And I'm like, that's one of those plays too, where if they wanted to do that on you almost any play, they probably could.
So not to be the guy that complains, but I've watched us all year. I've seen Florida twice. I'm not watching Florida throughout the season. But after 2 times of watching Florida, I know what they're trying to do.
Oh, yeah.
I know who they are.
Pretty evident.
Right?
Right. It's very evident.
I know who they are. Watching Alabama, I know who they are. And I'm not talking about talent-wise. I'm just talking about strategy. I'm talking about the way that they're approaching the game. As I've watched our team, I don't know what we're still, at this point in the season, I don't know what we're still trying to do. Feels like we went heavy on Michi ball. That's something that we relied on. And Michi played very hard last night.
He did.
And he played and he did some things that were really impressive in the one-on-one game last night. But other than that, I'm not sure what we're attempting to do. You know, Kobe Niles had a decent game against Alabama.
Yeah, that was maybe his best game.
That seems like something that could be a thing. We don't have a consistent identity, and that may be bad teams have the identity of being bad.
Right.
That's our identities. But on the positive side, that's the thing that's pretty much that irks me a little bit, is because when I watched Florida, I was like, oh, they like to get out and run. I saw that was very evident. And so when you watch these other teams, you figure out what they're trying to do. Watching us all year, have not had that sense of identity revealed.
No, and that's a big problem. That's why you're 2-11 in conference games, right? Especially in a league that is down from last year. I watched the SEC religiously last year. I watched it on a nightly basis this year. It's not the same as it was last season. I think the SEC has one team that can win the national title, and that's Florida. I'm not buying into Alabama being able to win it. I think Arkansas has real Final Four potential, but I can't see them winning a national title. They're too flawed in some other areas. There are too many teams in college basketball right now that are not flawed in those areas. Last year, I thought there was about 4 teams that could have won the national title out of the SEC. This year, I really just see it's Florida. And if Florida doesn't shoot better than 30% from 3 on the road to a Final Four, they're not going to get to Indianapolis to play in the Final Four. But with that even being said, too, still being 2-11 with a lot of winnable games that you've lost. Missouri was winnable as a team. That was a team that you should be able to compete against. You had Mississippi State's coming into town this weekend. You should be able to compete against them.
The key word should.
They should, yeah. And that's kind of been the whole thing this year. And the Alabama game more so than Florida, I thought you played from a game plan perspective maybe the best way you can play Alabama, which is try to really protect the paint. And if they want to shoot horse shots from 3, hope they have a bad night and then just rebound the misses, right? And I think for the most part in the Alabama game, they did that. Like Alabama only got 24 2-point attempts. And for the most part, as good as you can do with your smaller lineup, kept them out from just, dunking the entire game. But at the same time, you went 7 for 28 from 3, and they went 14 of 34. They were just making their threes, too, which is a risk that you run when you play that type of defense against Alabama. But even when you do play a lot harder, which I think they've played harder, I will say the last 2 games, I didn't see any quit. I think they gave the bare minimum, which is effort. The effort was much better. It wasn't there in the blowout loss at Arkansas. It wasn't there in the blowout loss at home against Florida the first time they played them. But at the same time, too, I think we're just at such a talent deficit that these last 2 games really show how far away you are than anybody else. Even if you played your A game last night, I don't think you're getting within 10 points of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you played your complete A game, and I thought they might have played a B-plus game for, 25 minutes of that game against Alabama, it still wouldn't have mattered. And that's like the sobering reality with this basketball program right now is that, yes, you didn't spend the money anybody else did in the league, but you're still not even remotely close to being competitive. And that's the really unfortunate part about it. And you're going to have to just somehow limp to the finish line here and regroup for next year. Again, when we did our Lamont Paris series, there are 2 options here. 1, you run it back with Lamont and you just give him more money, or 2, you move on, which also a very expensive option because it's a $12 million buyout and you got to buy out the staff, and then you got to hire a coach. And if you're going to hire a coach, you should probably spend money on hiring one of the best ones available because there are a lot of really good ones available. And then you're going to have to give that coach the money that Lamont wasn't getting. 2 options here. If you ask me what I think will happen, at this point, I think they're going to run it back and give him more money. And if that's the case, there's so many more positions on the floor that you just have to invest heavily in, because we have seen right now that if you don't have a true point guard or you don't have a big that can help you rebound, you're going to get worked in all these games. And if you have to overpay for like a certain position like that point guard, right? If you're trying to find your Talon Cooper, which worked really well in a Lamont Paris system, and you have to overpay for that player, fine. I'd be willing to do it just to get that person here because you haven't gotten that person here the last couple of years.
Yeah, I would argue that it's not even, there's no such thing as overpaying for something that you need.
Right, that's true.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it might cost more than you want it to, but I don't know.
How much would you pay for toilet paper when you're trapped on the toilet and you don't have any at that moment?
You feel me, right? What's the value of it? What's the value of water in the desert? I don't know. You need to pay for it. That's just what it costs what it's going to cost, and there's not going to be a way to cut corners in that. Now, with that being said, there are some edges that they need to find in roster construction if you're not going to be able to spend whatever amount of money. And so they have to be able to play around in the edges and in the margins, figure out a strategy that is cost effective and be able to work around that. And I think, or I thought, that that's what Lamont's specialty was being able to do. I thought this brand of ball that he plays would be able to get guys in that aren't necessarily not necessarily as valued in the greater market, but really valued in this system. That hasn't happened. Mm-hmm. And so that's what's going to need to work. You're going to have an evaluation of the system and figuring out, first off, Lamont, does your system work? That has to be a question that's asked. It has not worked 3 out of the 4 years. So that is a legit question. 2, if your system doesn't work, why hasn't it worked in these 3 years? And Lamont's going to have to come in with a book report and say, A, B, C, D, this is what I think should happen. This is what hasn't happened. Where can we move forward from here? So I have to have some conversations that need to be had. But you're right. There's no cheap alternative out of this.
No, there really isn't, right? You're going to have to spend a lot of money to invest in this program one way or another because what you're doing right now is not. And
there's no guarantee
working
either way.
Yeah. And my biggest thing, too, is if we're running it back with the staff next year, I would have just done this at the beginning of the season. Hey, there's somebody on staff where your job every day is watch at least 3 SoCon basketball games or, try to find the best mid-major players or just watch as much college basketball as possible and get ahead of roster construction for next year because you're going to have to be portal heavy again and you can't miss on portal evaluations. And I think some of the players they got in here would be good players if they were role players, but I think you're asking role players to be exceptional and be your best players. And that's where I think there's a little bit of a disconnect with this basketball team this year in terms of the roster construction because they're in roles that they haven't been asked to be in their college careers.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of even with Michi, right? Asking him to be the leading scorer and main ball handler and facilitator. Maybe not his best role.
It hasn't been his role.
And I think maybe his best role in college basketball is if he's the first guy off the bench and is your bench scorer and can light it up quickly, that's probably maximizing his efforts. But having him as your starting point guard, probably not where he's going to succeed at his best. Really, the big thing once the season ends is can you find guys who have played those roles? Because I think B.J. Mack's a perfect example. B.J. Mack was like the leading scorer at Wofford when he was there, and he was their best player. And he was asked to come here and be a starter and give you starter minutes and be one of the 3 or 4 best scorers on your team. He could do that. He's proven he could do that, right? You need to find more of those. And how you find those, whatever your process is to do it, needs to be upped a little bit if you are to run it back next year. But coming up next, there are a couple of trends in these last 2 games, too, from a 4-factor standpoint that I think kind of really paint the picture on where this team has fallen short this year, and we'll tell you what those things are coming up next here in the early game.
checking in on the traffic and starting off our morning well so far, as there is nothing to report besides our lovely long-term road construction.
So all season long, and I usually do this when evaluating basketball teams, so I'm sticking with this when it comes to the South Carolina men's team, is looking at the 4 factors. Every game I do that, and that's usually how I can determine how you win a game and how you lose a game. You know, you can watch the game and you can notice a lot of these things. Some of these things do stick out like a sore thumb when you watch them. But in this game too, or in these games, there are a couple things I think that stick out when you watch, and then when you put it on paper, also tell the story of how this team has lost games this year. Let's just start with the Alabama game. Effective field goal shooting, Alabama won that 60% to 46%. That's happened a lot this year, which for South Carolina, when you shoot that poorly from the three-point line, which they rank 332nd in the country, and their top 100 in attempt rate, it's going to cost you. Offensive rebound percentage. South Carolina grabbed only 10% of their missed shots against Alabama. Alabama grabbed 24%. Now, to give you an idea of what is good, what is bad, the national average for a team is 30.7%. Turnover percentage, South Carolina won that one, 10.6% to 15.9%. That's one thing that they actually have done. That's out of all the 4 factors, it's the only thing South Carolina is in the top 100 in, is offensive turnover percentage. They're actually 34th. Free throw rate, Alabama 0.47 free throws per field goal attempt, South Carolina 0.28. So they lost the free throw battle. Against Florida, Florida won the effective field goal battle, again, 50.8 to 41.3. Offensive rebound percentage, South Carolina grabbed 27.5%, still below average, but better than the Alabama game. However, Florida grabbed 48.6% of their missed shots. That's been a big thing all year, too. So I circle that one. And then turnover percentage, you won that one. You only turned the ball over on 16% of your possessions. Florida, 21%. And then you actually had a better free throw rate than Florida did, 0.35 to 0.29. I think a lot of that was because Florida probably didn't feel the need to just draw a ton of fouls in that game. It was officiated a little differently. But when I look through these 2 games, going back from Saturday to last night, there is something that sticks out and that has been sticking out all year long when we do this. You lose the first 2, which are effective field goal shooting and offensive rebound percentage. Statistically speaking, in Dean Oliver's book, Basketball on Paper, you're about 80% likely to lose any game in which you lose those 2 things right there. That's a non-starter. And if you can't compete at least those 2 things, right, if you're not going to shoot efficiently, you should be able to grab as many offensive rebounds as possible, or try to gear your team to grab a lot of second chance points and try to get non-scripted baskets, or else you're just going to keep falling behind. And in these games, you see them fall behind and never really claw their way completely back because, A, they're not getting a lot of offensive rebounds. And like we saw last night against Florida, even when Florida's not shooting really well, because 50.8% from the effective field goal percentage is really low for them. Like, congrats, you did a good job of holding them to a below-average night shooting from the field. However, they grabbed almost half their missed shots. It makes a world of difference, and it makes what could have been a competitive game where they play their C game and you play your A game, and you're able to win that game. It makes that a non-starter because you're not physical enough to be able to keep the other team off of the offensive glass.
So let me put this in layman's terms. Let me see if my meathead football brain understands this. I want to make the shots that I take.
Yes.
And if I don't make them, I want to be able to get the ball.
And get more bites at the
take
apple.
More shots.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you don't do those 2 things, It's going to be very difficult to win basketball games.
It is.
Seems like a foolproof metric. That being said, are there any other ways? I mean, obviously, compete, work harder, blah 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 blah. What are some strategic things that they can do to improve one of those? Let's say effective field goal percentage. What is something that this team, not that team, not a team, not a general team, this team can do to improve that?
Make the open shots you get. Like this team, if you're going to shoot a lot of threes, which again, on the surface, I'm not opposed to that type of strategy. That's the way the game is being played now. If you're going to have 43% of the shots you take become three-pointers, cool. You better guarantee that you make more than 30% of them. Really, the goal should be 33% because that's technically below average. 33.9% is the average that any team in the country shoots. But 33% is a point per shot. And if you're not grabbing offensive rebounds and you're shooting a lot of threes, you're wasting a lot of possessions. If you're missing a lot of them, and constantly this year, they have had games where they have missed a lot of threes or have shot under 30%. That's the first thing. Effective field goal shooting takes in all of your shots, but it just weighs out threes more than twos, right? So you can have you can maybe shoot 30 threes, but if you make 14 of them like Alabama does a lot, you're going to have a much better effective field goal shooting night than you would just looking at field goal percentage as a stat, because that doesn't tell the story of the type of shots you hit. Also, effective field goal shooting is really good at telling you how good at shot selection you are, right? If you take really good twos, like getting layups, or you're getting clean shots at the basket, then you're probably going to have a higher percentage there too, because again, you're just making shots. But the big thing for me offensively is when you do get a look that you get, can you knock it down? How many times this year we watched this team move the ball around, have a really good looking, like a good aesthetic possession, and it ends in a corner three that clanks off the back iron? That's happened so many times this year. And then when it comes to, like, here's the thing, you can't be bad at both. You can be bad at one or the other. Last year's Texas A&M team, you know what they ranked in effective field goal shooting? Outside the top 300. They were atrocious. They were the #1 offensive rebounding team in the country, and they ended up being a top 35 offense.
And that was their identity.
And that was their whole shtick, right? They didn't care if they missed the shot because you know why? They're crashing the glass with 2 or 3 guys, and they're getting that offensive rebound. They're drawing a foul, or they're putting it back up.
And so this goes back to the beginning of the season where we were told that this team was going to shoot the pee out the ball, and maybe it was just a misevaluation of the talent, or maybe they just haven't lived up to what they did in the preseason, or maybe they forgot how to shoot. I don't know. But this team has not lived up to what their proposed identity was.
And that's what dooms it from the start.
And that's going to be a non-starter. If you're supposed to be something and you're not that, there's no way that you can make those things happen. Now, you can decide whether how you want to split the blame pie on the coaches, on the players, wherever you want, but they're all in this together, and none of them are being successful this year.
Oh, in terms of the blame pie, this is like a school pizza party. Everybody's at least getting a slice. And if you're good enough, then you can get multiple slices of this. If you earned an extra slice, you're going to get an extra slice. But everybody's getting at least one here, right? And so much of that too, like when I just look at this team and like A, the numbers, and then B, just from what I have watched this year too, there's sometimes where I do get frustrated with the spacing, like the Clemson game. I think I yelled the word spacing out in my living room. Spacing! Yeah, like at least 10 times throughout that game. And there's sometimes I watch, like in the Alabama game, where I watch the offense. I'm like, okay, you're running good offense. You're finally being really aggressive. And sometimes the shots just don't fall. Oh, you created a really good shot, didn't fall. However, you can't just play the shots aren't falling, they'll fall eventually, when you are now 26 games into the season and your sample size suggests that you are a well below average shooting team. At this point, it's what you are. And it's been that way for about a month now. And then offensive rebounding too. Here's the worst part. You can't be below average in getting your own missed shot and below average in the other team getting their missed shot, because they are outside the top 260 in both of those metrics.
Well, Elijah, you delivered a lot of bad news, but I will like to deliver the news that in these last 2 losses, we have won the dunk contest. We have had more dunks than the other team by a slim margin, 3-2 both games, but we have won the dunk contest.
There have been dunks. Kristaps Ndoku got a dunk last night.
He did. And
he threw one down.
I was like, a dunk. Whoa.
This is what I've been missing. I've been crawling through the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, and someone just gave me a handful of manna. It was necessary. It was so needed. But coming up next, there was a winner in Gamecock athletics. The baseball team went to Spartanburg and had a good night. We'll discuss that and hear from Paul Maneri next here in the early game.
Press here for Absolute Glass, the premier glass company of the Midlands, offering auto, home, and business glass repair. If your glass is damaged, shattered, cracked, or broken, they can handle the job. If it's a cracked windshield, no problem. They'll come out to your location and they'll replace it for you, usually for free, and they'll work directly with the insurance to take away the headache. That's right. They'll come out to wherever you are. School, home, work, it does not matter. Absolute Glass will come out to you and take care of the job for you. Now, if you're at home, looking to increase the value of your home, Absolute Glass can help with that too. Windows, mirrors, shower enclosures. Say it all the time. If you can see through it, Ray and Marianne at Absolute Glass can do it. So check them out online at AbsoluteGlassInc.com. That's online at AbsoluteGlassInc.com.
checking in here on the traffic, and we're still experiencing our good luck this morning, as there's no accidents to report, and only our beloved long-term road construction in Horry, Lexington, and Richland County.
Preston, what month is it?
February.
And you know what February is? It's Heart Month,
Yes.
which means us here at 107.5 The Game and Cumulus, we have partnered with the American Heart Association, and we're doing the Heart Walk this year, which I'm really excited to do. I have been knighted as team captain. A representative from the American Heart Association did come in here and brought a sword and knighted me as the team captain for 107.5 The Game. So we're trying to raise some money for the Heart Walk and for the American Heart Association. And we tweet it out, and I'll retweet it again right now. That way it's closer to the top of the page at 107.5 The Game. A way to be able to donate to our team, because we are in a fundraising competition with B1067. And I'm afraid Leo Baldwin from B1067 will bully me if we lose.
Okay.
So there's a lot on the line here. A, it's a great cause. And you should do it for a great cause. I think everybody in our lives we've had somebody in our lives that has been impacted with heart issues or certain heart failures, and the work that they do at the American Heart Association is incredibly valuable, whether it is just awareness of certain conditions or how to do CPR. At the Heart Walk, you can learn how to do CPR in 90 seconds.
Very strong skill that I think everybody should have.
Everybody should have, because that could change somebody's life.
For sure.
So donate and also help us beat B1067, because I can't live with failure.
Mm-hmm.
I can't, especially when their studio is right down the hall and I have to see them every single day. And they're already talking smack. Already. And I don't like it. But you know who doesn't get to talk smack? Wofford. South Carolina gets the win last night.
Mm-hmm.
Gets a much-needed win on the diamond, especially after losing the finale.
A much needed win.
You would even say it is
The biggest win of the game of the season thus far. Because let me tell you something.
Oh, we're so back.
Let me tell you something. You lose the last game of a series to somebody from the... Did I catch that they were from the Horizon League?
They are from the Horizon League.
You lose to the Horizon League champs, and then you go in your own town and you lose to the Spartanburg Wofford Terriers back-to-back.
In the home of the Hubtown Spartanburgers.
Listen, man, you didn't want that. And so, yes, it is my thing to call every game the biggest game of the year, but this was huge. And I'm not saying that we need to go and throw a party because they beat Wofford, but I am saying that they escaped disaster by beating Wofford.
You know, there are some wins that get you up off your couch and you're fist pumping and you're yelling and your hype is all get out. This isn't one of those.
No.
But this is one where you can look at your buddy sitting on the couch next to you and just give him a little fist bump and you'd be like, all right, good work. Our work here is done. We didn't lose that one. And they won it 8-2. And I think one thing that is a good sign, one thing that I've appreciated about this team through the only 4 games so far played in this very long season, again, a very, very, very long season, pitching was solid. And you got a good midweek starting performance. And I think out of all the things that I can take away is that I think we can already get to maybe getting a picture of what maybe some established roles are. I thought Connor Ciccoli going 5 innings last night helps out a lot, because you don't want to have to exert too much of what your bullpen is during the week. You're going to be playing games like this throughout the year in the midweek. If you can constantly get Connor Ciccoli to be a guy who eats 5 innings in the midweek, or whoever's going to be starting those midweek games, because injuries can happen and things happen all the time where you might have to shuffle some things. If your midweek starter can get you 5 innings and you can win in the last couple innings relatively stress-free, you'll take it any single day.
Yeah, of course. You want to be able to spread that team around because you're playing the next series and the series is on the way. But it's a delicate balance because these midweek games do add up.
Yes.
Yeah, they do add up and they do look good on your resume when you look at your final tally as far as wins are concerned. So you have to figure out the balance. And more so than just looking at the final balance, I think for the psyche of the team and the fan base, midweek games are extremely important.
Most importantly, our psyche, right?
We
are running on a razor's edge here.
This is a very tight rope that you're walking. And so winning midweek games is extremely important for people deciding whether or not they're staying on or whether they're jumping off.
Now, the biggest story after the loss on Saturday to Northern Kentucky were the comments made about the team's energy and being a little tired after a doubleheader on opening day.
Ridiculous.
And has not been perceived well. And that's me being nice about it. But what were they feeling last night? Kale, this is going to be cut 5. This is Paul Maneri after the game talking about his team's energy for this weekday showdown against.
Well, I told him, we're going to enjoy this drive home, and then we're going to turn the page. I'm not making excuses for them anymore. It's not going to be because they're tired. We need to go out tomorrow night and play with a lot of energy and enthusiasm. I was just really, I was disappointed. We had such a nice crowd at the game Saturday, and they were just waiting to have fun and explode, and we just never gave them a reason to. And I never use the word embarrassed. I'm not embarrassed because, it just happens sometimes. But we got to get some adrenaline and realize that each day is a new day. And we didn't turn the page quickly enough from last Friday night to Saturday. And I'm pretty confident that tomorrow will be different.
Do you find the song choice that was playing behind Paul Maneri to be a little ironic?
That song was I'm glad I'm not the only one that noticed that song. I saw us both bopping our heads to it as it was playing.
Still a bop.
It goes.
But if you listen to Paul Maneri and not the Kanye West in the background, you'll still notice that he said, on Saturday we didn't turn the page quick enough. I think that would have been a better way to describe what happened on Saturday as opposed to immediately kind of going to, our players are tired.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is understandable to say, hey, we had 2 wins to start the season. We were excited. We didn't move on fast enough. And that's something we'll learn throughout the year. It's inexcusable. I'm not going to give excuses to them. It's got to be up to me to get them to turn that page. You could have avoided a lot of what we end up getting to having to address your team's energy after the midweek win against Wofford if we would just kind of stuck to maybe that game plan. But nonetheless, clearly more energized, a little more fueled, and you got the job done that you needed to get done.
Yeah, and that's the important parts about a baseball season is taking care of what you need to take care of, especially if you have plans or designs to be a tournament team, a host, or whatever grand lofty goals are. You have to take care of midweek games at Spartanburger Stadium. Right. Or wherever. Okay, so you have to do those things, and they're not necessarily the most glamorous, and they're not the most fun, and they're not the things that the stands are not going to be full, and it's not going to be on TV, but who cares? Because those are the games.
Yeah. Those
are the games that you win. Those statistics still count. All of this stuff matters, and so those are the ones that mature teams are able to take care of, and they did this one, and we'll see how they can move forward.
Because I got news for anybody playing college baseball. If you can't get up for even a game that's in a minor league stadium with not a lot of fans, that's not going to be on TV. If you're lucky enough to get drafted into the MLB draft, you're going to spend a couple of years doing that. And if you don't play well in those environments, you don't get to play in the big environment, right?
You'd be playing for the Albuquerque Tortillas in the Northwest League. You better love this.
You better, because when you're busing it up to from Birmingham to Montgomery to play at the daunted Montgomery Biscuit Stadium, then you might not be cut out for Major League Baseball. But they're back at it again today, so now we're going to see how well we have turned the page here after a successful win. They got Gardner-Webb today, not tonight. Coverage starts at 3:45, and you can hear that here on 107.5 The Game and the Gamecock Sports Network. But coming up next, it's already the Olympics of rampant cheating. However, we are now cheating in a sport where we've never even had to think about repercussions. Is anything sacred anymore? We'll discuss next. Is anything sacred anymore? I'm not surprised when people are trying to cheat to make their genitalia bigger. That way, when they get fitted for their suits at the Winter Olympics for long distance or for big air skiing or whatever it is they call it, it seems like extreme skiing, but essentially trying to create a sail underneath their legs to get them a little bit further, apparently up to 5 meters. That's a quite a big addition to your jump. That's one thing. And as funny as that was, I wasn't surprised to see that happen, right? That's the type of Olympic scandal we've come to know and kind of expect, right? Like blood doping and bicycling. Happens all the time. Good luck ever stopping it. But we've reached a point in these Winter Olympics where the cheating scandals have reached curling.
Oh, no.
The closest sport in the Winter Olympics that resembles a hobby is the one that we are now cheating on a large scale. And if you haven't seen it, the Canadian curling team has been accused of touching the stone past the hog line. That's an incredible sentence that just left my mouth, but those are the official terms in curling. When you have the stone and you release it, you can touch it as many times as you want before it gets to the big green line, also known as the hog line. Once it passes the hog line, you shall not touch the rock. And unfortunately, Team Sweden noticed that Canada was doing a little something. Once that stone passed the hog line. And sure enough, they set up a camera because in curling, it is such a quote-unquote gentleman's sport or a sport of honor where it is, for the longest time, since it became an Olympic sport in 1998, policed itself, right? You call your own infractions. If you mess up, you own it. it's part of the sport, right? We are all, it's like the social contract you sign when you play curling. They set up a camera, and when they saw him do it, they called him out on it. And of course, the Canadian, I guess the stone tosser, says, "Oh, bleep off. We didn't do that. We didn't do that," and got really defensive. And they said, "Yeah, where's my craft dinner?" And South Park. And they said, "Okay, well, we'll show you later." And sure enough, that camera they put up there showed that once that rock was past the hog line, another finger goes out and he pokes it again and was double touching it pretty blatantly. It was pretty obvious. And now we have to have cameras everywhere for curling because nothing is sacred. We can't just trust somebody to go out there and roll this rock on ice while 3 men in brooms are sweeping on the other end without trying to find some type of advantage that you might not even need.
This story hits a lot of my pain points here because I am a pretty adamantly against camera surveillance, instant replay, all of that, because I do think it takes away from the general spirit of the sport. But I'm also against blatant violators of the code, whatever the code is. And you cannot go into a gentleman's sport and violate the code. That's because now I got to call the authorities because we are supposed to be policing this ourselves. It's like basketball. We're playing pickup. You respect my call.
Yeah. Or if I foul you, you know what? If I hack you and you don't call it, fine, I'll do it for you. I fouled you.
Right. But when you're trying to find to weasel your way around in the system, taking advantage of the code that's supposed to be in place, I don't like that. So these are two conflicting issues that I have. And I'm not sure if this was coming into Preston's court. I'm not sure how I would rule on this. Because I think the bigger violation is the violation of the code.
Because you don't need replay review in curling. This is one of those sports that, again, it is so recreational. You don't need replay. And if everybody's just being honest with themselves, we don't have to have anything like this happen. There's a reason there hasn't been anything like this happen. Until now, it has become an issue. And look, I think a way that you get an edge in anything in life tells you a lot about you. If you find your edge within the boundaries of what is right and wrong, then you're crafty. If you're finding an edge outside of those boundaries, you're an a-hole. And that is exactly what this Canadian curling team has been doing. Clearly, they know what they're doing. If you're doing it habitually to the point where everybody's starting to notice, and then you insult their intelligence by saying you didn't do it, and you get into the whole gaslighting part, no, you didn't see me do that, and clearly you are, then what wouldn't you cheat at, right? Yes, I know there's a lot of money on the line. There's funding. There's Olympic medals. I totally get it. The stakes are really high. But can we do it without having to violate the unspoken rule? Actually, that's not even an unspoken rule. That's a very well-spoken rule. That's kind of very well laid within the framework here. But can we do it without all this? That's my thing. That's where I get to is anything sacred anymore? What does this tell us about society at large, where even Olympic curling is not safe from trying to bend the rules and take advantage of a system that relies a lot on trust?
Yeah, and it's just the idea of we want to win. And so, I mean, people will do whatever they will to get that extra advantage. But the problem is they used to compete against each other in like these small circuits where it's like, I know you know me.
It's a very tight-knit community.
When the community gets larger, it's a lot easier to cheat because I don't know you. And what you going to do about it? And that's kind of that's where the rub is on this.
So now we're going to have to put up cameras at the hog line. And we might have instant replay in curling to see if somebody committed an infraction. That is where we're at. I can laugh at the, hyaluronic acid. Is that how you say that? The hyaluronic acid being injected in places it doesn't belong. Is it cheating? Yes. That's also kind of funny. I still find that to be a little funny. But now we've got to the point where it's like, come on, man. And I know Get on the Line is at 7:45, but we already have a lot of people are putting on the line. So I think we can preemptively go ahead and say, Canadian curling team, get on the line. And then don't touch anything when you're off the line.
Get on the hog line.
Get on the hog line. Also, why do they call it the hog line? Somebody has to know this. If you do, 803-404-6100. How does that term get brought into the sports lexicon?
There's nothing about. I don't know why.
I don't know. All I know is that it's really funny. That's the only thing I can't deny here. Hour number 1 is in the books. Hour number 2 is coming up. And coming up next, Seth Emerson has South Carolina as a potential surprise team in the SEC for 2026. What can make that come to fruition? Well, we'll discuss that next.
All right, fellas, listen up, man. You may be feeling like you're losing your edge. Maybe you've been doing all this working out since the new year and you're not seeing any results. But that can be frustrating. But there's somebody there that can help you. You don't have to just live with that frustration. You can call Dr. Dan Boltnight at the men's clinic. Dr. Boltnight is a respected local physician, and he'll get to the bottom of whatever it is that you're feeling. This isn't some faceless online clinic where they take your information, throw it to some data bank, and spit back some answers for you that are not personalized or tailored for you. Dr. Boltnight gives you a free consultation, and at that consultation, they'll get your numbers, get your T-level check, and they'll figure out what's going on with you. Again, this is somebody that you'll talk to person to person, face to face. So don't wait. Call them at 803-875-MENS. That's 803-875-MENS. Or visit them online at mensclinicsc.com.
Checking out the traffic an hour into today's show, and still no bad news to report. Only our beloved long-term road construction in Horry, Lexington, and Richland County.
Hour number 2 of the early game starts right now. I'm Elijah Campbell. He's Preston Thorne. He's Cale Wilson. And we like giving stuff out here at the station. And if you like going to a baseball game, which you wouldn't, we have tickets for Friday's game, which is South Carolina against Army. That's at 2 o'clock. We have 2 4-packs of tickets to give away. So callers 1 and 2, our first 2 callers, you hear the sound of Cale Wilson's voice, you are a winner. 803-446-2100. That is the number to call if you would like to win some baseball tickets. But on the football side, we have a long off season ahead of us. Now that portal acquisition season is essentially over. We'll get another portal window in the spring, but that usually isn't as splashy. I think maybe the biggest spring portal get I think South Carolina's got in my time here in terms of somebody who's been really productive was Vandrever's Jacobs. Okay. I don't know if I can think.
About the back end portal?
Yeah, like the second portal window. I can't think of any others off the top of my head that were spring portal guys. Might be wrong. You can always correct me. Again, 803-446-2100. But we're going to have a long offseason. There's going to be a lot of talking about what this team needs to do for next season. We're going to be covering so much about the SEC. SEC Media Days alone is still 5 months away. It's a long time. However, our pal Seth Emerson gives us content. His mailbag every week is always really good. But he was asked about an early surprise team in the SEC. Now, I thought what was really interesting, Seth has a different take on what a surprise team would be, because he goes, well, Vanderbilt is expected to dip without Diego Pavia and Eli Stowers, but it does have a 5-star quarterback, Jared Curtis. And after going 10-3, would making the CFP really be a surprise? I would say yes, but he's not maybe saying it is a surprise because they were so good last year. And he mentioned, Auburn being intriguing because of a new quarterback coach duo that came in with Alex Golish and Byron Brown. And he says Kentucky's interesting because he likes the hire of Will Stein. I do too. I think Will Stein's a really good offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. And they got Kenny Minchie from the transfer portal, which Minchie hasn't played, but he was a highly touted recruit. He was a really good high school player. I covered him when he was in high school. Played in that same league as Marcel Reed.
Okay.
He was at Pope John Paul. And so a really good high school quarterback, just lost to C.J. Carr in a preseason battle at Notre Dame that apparently was really neck and neck. And we saw how good C.J. Carr was for Notre Dame this year. But here's how he ends the answering to that question. He goes, there isn't one team I'm in love with as a dark horse right now, so I'll go with the team that was out of nowhere 2 years ago, but a disappointment last year, South Carolina, which still has the same coach, quarterback, and several other pieces from that 2024 team. The schedule is backloaded, so there's a path where the Gamecocks are 6-1 going into Oklahoma on Halloween with a chance to carry momentum down the stretch. I find that to be a very interesting angle on this. And I think what Seth reflects here is something that I've been thinking about when it comes to how am I going to project this team in 2026. It's not like in some programs, if you had a really good 2024 and a disappointing 2025, sometimes the roster overhaul is so dramatic that there's just not anybody from that 24 team on that played significant snaps or played snaps of consequence, right? That's not the case for this South Carolina team. Like, if you are looking for something that should make you feel a little optimistic, it's that 2024 is not ancient history, and a lot of those guys are still here. Dylan Stewart is still here. Lenore Sellers, still here. Nick Harbor, still here. And Shane Beamer, still the head coach, right? I don't think he just forgot how to do it. But if you're looking for a team to bounce back from a bad year, somebody that at least has the continuity. And then we have the rest of the underlying things, like a new offensive coordinator, new offensive line coach, a lot of new players on the offensive line. Those are other factors that are going to be really kind of maybe the deciding thing that makes you either 7-5 or 8-4 as opposed to what you had this year. But I did find it interesting that somebody who covers the SEC at large can still see that in his mind think that it's possible South Carolina can be that sleeper team.
Well, that's because if you're talking about they have the same coach and they have the same quarterback, which is my metric.
Preston Thorne test.
See you, Seth. That would mean you have to have a certain belief about those coaches and that quarterback. You'd have to believe that the coach is capable, and you have to believe that the quarterback is competent. I do believe both of those things, because the idea of just saying they have the same, well, it could be the same bad ones coming back.
They could if they've never achieved that before. Like, let's say in 2024 you were 6-6,
right,
and then 4-8 this year. how can I say that you have the capability of winning more than 6 games? You don't.
But
They won 9.
they won 9, and it was that coach, and it was that quarterback. And every national article that we talk about, I have to put an asterisk there, is that you have to say that, oh, yeah, they went 4-8 with one of the worst offenses in the SEC. So bad that they fired the offensive coordinator and the offensive line coach mid-season. That is a catastrophe by any stretch of the imagination. And so you have to assume that though Elijah Campbell says it cannot get worse, you have to assume it won't be worse than what it was, and that will in turn create some positive momentum.
I just warn people against saying, that it couldn't get worse, because those are always dangerous last words in any situation, sports, life. If you ever have a bad day, I'm not great at giving advice. We gave, I thought, some pretty killer Valentine's Day advice the other day on Friday when we said, hey, just run the play. You know what? Can't attest. Run the play. It works. You're in for a good day. If you're having a bad day, if you have in your playbook the scream to the heavens and say, this can't get any worse, don't run that one. Because it will find a way. There are forces that will find a way to make this worse for you. But for this football team, I don't believe it will get worse. So I want to watch my phrasing here. But I do find there to be a lot of value in having somebody in your quarterback who was one of the big reasons that you were so good in 2024, back even after a bad year. Does it maybe give me a little concern that no matter how good the offensive coordinator is, that it's the 3rd different offensive coordinator he's had in 3 years starting? Absolutely. And I think that should be a point of hesitation for anybody. But I feel a whole lot better that Dylan Stewart's back, and at least his buddy, Nick Harbor, also returning to the team. If I'm projecting it moving forward, and again, it's really hard to do, and we're going to be doing this for months and months and months, so I'm going to be pacing myself when looking at the rest of the league too, and then try to go matchup by matchup to really try to get at least a great idea for myself what an expectation is. But I do like where the floor, not the floor, because floor is 4-8. We just saw that. But I like what you have in terms of guys that were contributors on that team that are back in the building. So at least you have a sense of belief that it can be done. And for a lot of places, again, if you were 6-6 in 24 and then were a disappointing 4-8 the following year, your belief might not be breaking past 6 wins. It could say, hey, if we play our best football, we can get to 7, right? That would make you feel a little better about South Carolina maybe being a surprise team. And I think most teams that you look at that have surprise seasons oftentimes may have just had a lot of bad luck, right? Phil Steele every year does a really good thing, like a really good piece in his magazine at the very beginning of it, where he talks about his surprise teams. And really, it's got a lot of football analysis, but not as much as you would think, because he bases a lot of it on how many one-score losses did you have the year before. Again, I call this the Kansas City Chiefs effect. 2 years ago, they were 11-0 in those games. I think they lost like 10 of those games this season. It completely reversed, right? Sometimes those things find a way to even themselves out. And South Carolina lost a lot of close games in the fourth quarter. Again, no one wants to hear that. We don't want to hear about how close you are. And when Shane says no one wants to hear that, I completely agree. But when it comes to looking for a team like what Seth was tasked to do, to look at a team that could be a surprise, I don't think it's a bad exercise to go through and see who had the closest losses last year. And if you retain some key players, that I think it is reasonable to expect some of those results go differently.
That's why this year is such a referendum on Shane Beamer, on the Shane Beamer era.
Yes.
Because this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we've had success, we've had ups, we've had downs. What is going to be the Shane Beamer situation? Is he going to be able to bounce back again? Which is not a great spot to be in, but he's been able to do it.
Being tasked with that is not the most fun thing in the world.
And this is where I have to take. He hasn't been tasked with that. He has tasked himself with this on several things. And so I'm going to make sure we say that. But can he do it, get to that level, and then be able to sustain it? Because, again, you have somebody who is a high-level draft pick at quarterback, which is something that we've seen everybody across the country wants. Everybody across the country wants. They're willing to pay for it. They're willing to do whatever they can to get it. You have it. You have a defensive end who is going to be a high-level draft pick. So you have all of these staple pieces in place. can you get it together where this team can be successful? That's why this is the referendum on Shane this year.
So when I look at Seth's response there, I can see that and I say I agree with the premise 100%. Then there's the underlying things that we'll be talking about all offseason too. And really the conversation just begins and ends with how good does your offensive line end up being? And how good does it have to be for you to be able to consider this team a legitimate threat to be the surprise team? Because like for Vanderbilt, for instance, a lot went their way. The defense got a lot better. They had a lot of players coming back, and they lost some close games, right? So you saw the flip in one-score game margin, and they won a few of those close games in 2025. And their offensive line was just good enough. Like Vanderbilt wasn't going to win a Joe Moore Award off, from their offensive line, but they were good enough. I think one thing we're going to be talking about all year is South Carolina wants to get to that point of what Seth's talking about to make it to where things like, one-score loss record reversing, things still have to happen, right? Like that's not just magic. Like things happen to be able to kind of create your own luck too, so you have to do that. And I think all that's going to begin and end with the offensive line. And so much of what we're going to talk about this offseason is going to be centered around, can you block anybody?
Shane made the decision. We moved forward, got the offensive coordinator in place, got the offensive line in place. And I would remind people that he did go 9-4, and that offensive line wasn't great either.
They were good enough.
Good enough.
In the last 6 weeks.
They were good enough. And that offense, though Dow somehow parlayed it into a head coaching job, I'm old enough to remember that offense was not necessarily was a fan favorite either. So you could say that they were able to win those games almost in spite of the production that they had in offense. The hope is now that they have a guy who is bringing in an offensive brand that maybe that helps skyrocket and maybe takes this whole thing to a next level. But Seth Emerson does say, as he lays out here, and I'll read this, his words, not mine. Shane Beamer has been largely good at South Carolina, but is coming off of a bad year and wasn't hired by his current athletic director. This is a clear hot seat situation. Seth Emerson, quote.
And that's really the storyline with this team coming into this year, because last year was such a colossal failure because the expectations were so high and you failed to deliver on those. Really, when you look at kind of the schedule too, I think Seth mentioning that it's going to be backloaded means there's going to be a lot of pressure in these first 6 or 7 games to have a really good record going into the stretch where you have, Tennessee, Georgia, Clemson, and I don't know how good Florida is going to be this year. But that game's coming back.
And to be fair, those are two opposing ideas with Shane. His teams have been very good going through November, which is something that has been beneficial to them. However, his teams have struggled early in the season. So he's going to have to overcome that and then keep the idea of being good in November. But we'll see.
And because that's the thing, right? We have not had maybe some of the best starts to seasons. You need to have that. If you don't have that, then it's spelling a lot of trouble. Which I remember talking last summer, going into the season, saying, schedule's backloaded. You got to take care of the game in September. And I remember circling that Missouri game. And then once you lost to Vanderbilt the way you did, then lost Missouri, then it started to feel pretty uncomfortable. And if you have a similar September like you did last year, things will get even more uncomfortable. But I don't like being uncomfortable, so I want to pivot to a point of comfort, which is the team on campus that is winning a lot. And after beating LSU on Saturday night, Dawn Staley gets herself one step closer to another SEC regular season title. Well, let's put that greatness into perspective, because I did a little research to see where she stands when it comes to how many regular season titles she has won and what this would mean historically if they're able to seal the deal. We'll do that for our morning meeting coming up next.
Well, our streak of good luck has ran out. We have a few accidents to report here. Along with our long-term road construction, there's an accident reported on Main Street near US 601 in Kershaw County. Got an accident on I-20 eastbound at I-26 exit 64 in Lexington County. And we've got an accident at Farrow Road, Highway 555 near Pisgah Church Road in Richland County. Coming up, we've got our morning meeting where we will discuss the team in the area that has been winning a lot recently.
If you take a look at the SEC standings in women's basketball, after the win on Saturday, you could say that South Carolina has put themselves firmly in the driver's seat to be able to win a conference regular season title. Now, here's the fun part. If they're able to do that, we can now look back on how many this has been since Dawn Staley took over. Not just since Dawn took over as the head coach, but since 2013, 2014. So to break that down, we'll do that for today's morning meeting.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Repeat after me. Today will be an awesome day.
It is when you're winning.
Let's go. Good morning, great today. Today will be an awesome day. Good morning, great today. Today will be an awesome day.
Now, to give you an idea as to how dominant or how good of a position this team is in right now, they have a 1.5 game lead over Vanderbilt, 2 over Texas, 3 over LSU. Now, they do have a couple hard games. I know tomorrow night you are on the road against Alabama, ranked team, but you handled them pretty well in January.
Mm-hmm.
You play at home against Ole Miss. I believe that is on Sunday.
Game day. We'll be here.
Game day is going to be here for that. That's a pretty big deal. So you have that game on Sunday. And then, of course, you end with Missouri at home for the last home game. You should be able to handle that pretty well. And then you're at a ranked Kentucky team who's pretty solid. I like what Kentucky's done at times this year. There's a lot of Jekyll and Hyde with them. So there's still a couple games to be played. I know I'm putting the cart before the horse here, but I'm in a position where I can put the cart before the horse. And if I can do it, more than likely, I'm going to do it. But you have the tiebreaker over Vanderbilt. You have a tiebreaker over Texas because the win was the SEC play win. You have the tiebreaker over LSU. And if you beat Ole Miss, I think the only other team that can compete with you, then you have the tiebreaker over them. Then Tennessee's also 8-4. And then the one team that did beat you in league play is 7-5. No chance that they're able to catch you there. So, assuming, let's just say that Dawn does end up winning the SEC regular season title. This would be the 5th straight regular season title. This would be her 8th regular season title in the last 11 years. Again, I firmly believe that regular season titles in conference play in basketball are harder to win than the tournament. And it would be the 10th, I guess, regular season title for Dawn at South Carolina in general. So in the last 11 years, she would have had 8 if she wins this year. It'd be her 10th overall. Now, if they win the SEC tournament, that would be the 10th SEC tournament title. So that would give her 10 SEC tournament titles and 10 regular season titles. And a tourney title would be the 8th time winning both regular season and conference tournament. Maybe the hardest thing to do is to be able to win both, especially now this year it'd be harder because I think the league is just better. I think you have more ranked teams. There are more teams that can compete in this league. This is the best Vanderbilt team that we've probably seen in our lifetime. Vanderbilt's had some good women's basketball teams. Texas has been really good, obviously. They're competing for a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. We know what LSU is year in, year out. Ole Miss is on the rise. We saw what Oklahoma did to South Carolina when they went to Norman and played their C game. Oklahoma was good enough to beat you.
Mm-hmm.
and Kentucky and Alabama both also ranked. Oh, yeah, and Georgia just got done beating Vanderbilt over the weekend. Georgia women's basketball may not be back like it was under Andy Landers, but they're slowly getting there. Like, I can see the linear progress with that program, and a lot of that has taken place this year. It's a lot of quality teams in this league, and I would say there are more quality teams in the league this year than they've been the last few years. It's not as top-heavy as it used to be. I think the league's a little bit deeper than it's been. So to win the regular season and a tournament title, I think would be really significant. And then, of course, I went back to 2013, 2014. Don's record in SEC play in the regular season, 187-17. Would you like to take a guess at what winning percentage that would be?
Oh, that's upwards of 85.
If you can't see, if you're not watching on the YouTube stream, you'll see me with my thumb pointing up because it's 92.
Yo. I think that's pretty good.
I would say that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
And in that time frame, so since 2013 and 2014, and I'm counting shared titles here too, so I'll include shared titles. Only 3 coaches have won regular season titles that's not named Don Staley since 2013, 2014. Now, I am in my 30s now. That year of basketball would have been the first year of college basketball since I graduated high school. And only 3 SEC coaches have won regular season titles. Vic Schaefer won 2 with Mississippi State and 1 at Texas last year, technically because they shared it. Gary Blair at Texas A&M won a random one. And then Holly Warlick at Tennessee. And I think that was the first post-Pat Summitt year, was when Holly Warlick won that regular season title. But only 3 other coaches have been able to win a regular season conference title since the tip-off of the season in 2013.
And that's dominance. And that goes back to the conversation that we kept having. Enjoy it, because we don't know how long it's going to last. But while we're here, it's fun to be at the top of the mountain. It's fun to have a team that you know goes on the court and a 92% chance that they're going to win the game. That's fun as a fan.
Against your peers,
yes.
Right? In your conference.
Not just any. That's not non-con. That's in conference, the toughest alleged games. That is fun to be a fan of those types of programs. So again, enjoy it while it's here. Enjoy it while it's here.
And if I would have told you when South Carolina hired Don Staley that you would have Pat Summitt-esque dominance, would you have signed up for that?
Of course.
Now, it's going to be hard to get the number of national titles that Pat has, right? Don's not halfway there yet. But if you look at regular season and tournament success, now clearly Pat's the standard. I counted she had 16 regular season titles, where she either won or had a share of the regular season title, 15 tournament wins. However, remember earlier where I said that if they win the regular season, which it looks like they're going to, and win the conference tournament, that would be the 8th time they won both? Pat Summitt only did that 6 times. There were a lot of years where she either won the regular season and lost in the tournament, or won the tournament and maybe finished 2nd in the regular season. That only happened for her under her program 6 times.
Well, that happens a lot of times with legends, and when you look back, you forget like they actually did lose sometimes.
Right.
You only remember that they won, but kind of technically, you're looking like 92% of the time Don is winning, so it's going to be even harder to remember some of the losses. And if you look at those 17 losses, I could probably think about, it's wild that I can call them out, like Missouri, Kentucky,
Yeah,
this year,
Kentucky. And then the Kentucky in the SEC tournament doesn't even count towards that because it's regular season.
Right.
So it doesn't even count towards that, that
so
number
it's like,
right
man,
there.
you can kind of think about it. It's like, because it's so shocking when they do lose. It's like, what? What happened? So it's really fascinating to see that. With all of that being said, I think their goals, obviously, every year is to progress, win, and sweep regular season, tournament, Final Four, championship. You kind of lay them out in that order, and they are on pace to do all of those things. I jokingly say it most of the time when I say all their goals are in front of them, but literally all their goals are still in front of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Every single one.
They have high, lofty goals.
Yeah, it's not just winning 20 games, right? There are a lot of basketball programs in the country, men or women, where it's winning 20 games is the goal. Not here. Not here. And that's fun. It's fun to have that level of dominance on campus. But coming up next, you could say that Don Staley and this Gamecock team fits the bill of they are who we thought they were, especially when they went on the road and won a top 6 showdown against LSU on national television. But we'll give our Denny Green Awards and tell you who exactly is who we thought they were next.
Checking in on the traffic. Got an accident in Kershaw County on Main Street near US 601. Got an accident in Richland County on Leesburg Road at I-77. Got an accident in Lexington County on I-20 eastbound at exit 64 near I-26. And then we've got an accident in Richland County on Farrow Road, Highway 555 near Pisgah Church Road. And then our long-term road construction that everyone loves. Coming up, we are who we thought they were.
The Bears are what we thought they were. They're what we thought they were. We played them in preseason. Who the hell takes a third game in the preseason like it's bull? We played them in the third game. Everybody played 3 quarters. The Bears are who we thought they were.
We let him off the hook. Now, you know what you should do if you want to crown him, Preston Thorne? You crown him.
Crown them.
But for this week's They Are Who We Thought They Were, I want to keep it in the world of football here. My first Denny Green Award for today. Running backs. Like modern NFL running backs.
All of them?
You know why? Because the Seattle Seahawks are unlikely. They're not going to franchise tag Kenneth Walker. Unlikely to retain him, meaning he'll probably be a free agent after winning Super Bowl MVP. Because I think we have learned throughout time the most easily replaceable position on the football field in terms of just value is the running back position. Now, do they win that Super Bowl without Kenneth Walker? No. However, where do they get Kenneth Walker? Second round. A lot of the better running backs in the league taken outside the first round. There's a reason that the feeling in the NFL is to not take a running back in the first round or take him really high in the NFL draft because you can get really good production drafting them elsewhere, which is why every time I see a mock draft that have the Saints taking Jeremiah Love, I cringe a little bit. It's a double-edged sword because the guy's really good, but at the same time, it's like, oh, we have so many other needs. We can get a running back.
The only counter argument to that is Bijan.
Bijan's been good, but has it made the Falcons' offense that much better?
No.
Bijan's really good.
Of course, when that, I don't deal in that business anymore, but if you only get him the ball 7 times a game, I'm not sure how he can make the team much better, but that's
Fair
another
point.
story for another time.
Fair point.
Malaysia Fulwale. They are who I thought they were. We obviously were very intimately familiar with Malaysia here. She transfers to LSU. I personally don't pay as much attention to how she's playing there. Come to find out, she is who we thought they were. Almost essentially the same player. When you look at the numbers from the field, 1 of 8 from the field, some of those were erratic 3-pointers that she was taking. Some things that we were very familiar with here, but also on-ball defense, picking Ravens' pocket. Exactly what the things that we were familiar with here.
3 steals. She got 3 steals.
3 steals during the game. So Malaysia Fulwale's game is exactly what we thought it was. And there's a judgment to be made after that. But if you've seen her play here, then you've seen her play there. And so Malaysia is who we thought she was.
There's a real duality to her game that makes her one of the more interesting players in all of college basketball. It's because when you see the highlights and you see the flashes and you see some of the jaw-dropping stuff that she does, it does seem like Rajon Rondo-esque, right?
Ooh, okay.
Like there's a lot of Rondo to her game. And I remember a few times when she was here talking about one of the people that she watched, one of the players that she always watched to try to model her game after was Rajon Rondo. And I see it, right? But also, what could Rajon Rondo not do? Shoot.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what he would do? Have some jaw-dropping passes, facilitate the offense really well. Early in his career, there were a lot of turnovers, and they had to kind of coach that out of him. But he was great. He was great defensively. Active hands, got a lot of steals. I think Malaysia is maybe a more extreme version of that, where you see the flashes, and then you see the head-scratching turnovers. Then you'll see a great defensive play, getting a steal or a block, right? I mean, at her size, getting the blocks that she does is really impressive. Takes a lot of athleticism. But there are instances where you want to pull your hair out watching because you know that she's better than the play that she made or the decision that she just made, right? And it seems like that's kind of the same thing she's fallen into at LSU, where that hasn't either been coached out of her or she hasn't developed that herself, because it's a two-way street, right? I'm sure Kim Mulkey and Dawn Staley weren't the first coaches to say, hey, you're a really good passer. Don't try to make that pass.
Yeah, and that's where you would start to say kind of like, if Dawn Staley can't get it out you and Kim Mulkey can't get it out you,
this might be...
You might need to look in the mirror a little bit.
Or maybe you're closer to a finished product than what anybody might think, right? And again, coming off the bench at LSU, playing the exact same role, still doing a lot of the stuff that makes you go, wow, there is so much talent there. You could be the face of the sport if you put together a really good 40 minutes.
Ultimate wow player. Wow or wow.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, either way.
Just the duality of Full Wiley on full display on Saturday night. That was a quintessential Malaysia Full Wiley game. Going back to my point about running backs, too, they are who we thought they were, the Seattle Seahawks. You know why? Because somebody posed the question, said, has anybody just not retained the Super Bowl MVP after winning the Super Bowl? I tried to go back through the mental Rolodex and find out the closest example, and the closest example I got was the Seattle Seahawks when they won the last time they won the Super Bowl. Now, it wasn't the year after, but it was the year after that where Malcolm Smith, who was the MVP of the Super Bowl they won, let him walk in free agency and let the Raiders pay him a boatload of money.
Yeah, somebody else has to pay for that. We extract the value out of him, and I think this is a fair exchange on both sides, right? I don't think the Seahawks should overextend themselves for a running back when the data clearly shows that that's not where the most value is. But also Kenneth Walker, hey, dog, don't stay here for loyalty. Yeah. Somebody's out there going to pay you for the next 2 or 3 years.
Somebody's going to see, 27 carries for 135 yards in a Super Bowl. You were Super Bowl MVP. We'll overpay, right?
And you need to go get that now because of the looming deadline that is on running back. So I think this is fair business on both sides, and it's probably how it should work out.
And if this is the second time the Seahawks have done that, where they at least let an MVP walk within 2 years of being the MVP of the Super Bowl, I think that's getting close to Denny Green territory. It's not like it's a bad thing. Sometimes we'll do this and it's a bad thing. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to get this Denny Green award.
Victor Wembanyama.
I love that guy. He's an alien.
And Ant Edwards. They are who I thought they were.
Yes.
And these are just two very fun, very different dudes. Two very fun NBA players. And you watch them play in the All-Star game where everybody's complaining about effort, and these two dudes were going at it.
Yes.
And the quote was, Ant-Man said he saw Vic set the tone, and once he set the tone, he was like, I can't stand for that. And you just saw those dudes going at it, and those dudes are ultimate competitors. And what you see on the court for all of the things that everybody talks about, whatever, you don't get it out of these two. These two are extremely fun athletes to watch on the court.
I'll keep in the world of basketball, too. Michigan. Now, if you're watching South Carolina, Florida last night like I was, you probably didn't watch it all the way through, but I was keeping tabs on that Michigan-Purdue game, top 10 matchup. Michigan now the number 1 team in the country, and they pretty much led by double digits the entire game. I think that's probably pound for pound the best team in basketball right now. They don't just beat a lot of their opponents. They totally steal their will to play basketball after a little bit. They're a really good shooting team. They're elite defensively. They are huge. And as good of an offense as Purdue is, Michigan shut them down. Like, I think more than likely once we get to bracket season and we're all picking brackets, and you know how ESPN or Yahoo, whatever website you use, says like they'll divvy out like the percentage of teams that people picked to win the title. Michigan's probably going to be the most popular championship pick because they are exactly who we thought they were, and that is maybe the most dominant team that's in the sport right now.
Goes to show you what getting the right coaching spot can do.
You want to know also in terms of, maybe it's not a Denny Green Award-esque deal, but imagine being Indiana basketball. Now, Indiana football is taking the heat off of them, but the administration said, you know what? We know Dusty May really wants the job. He's a guy who was a manager here. He's looking to move up.
That's right. That's right.
He was a manager, student manager under Bob Knight.
Like the very end of Bob Knight. Yes, that's right. Yes.
He said, you know, he did just take Florida Atlantic to a Final Four, but we got to give Mike Woodson one more year, right? Give Mike Woodson one more year. They missed out on the Dusty May sweepstakes, and guess what Dusty's been doing at Michigan?
You don't have to give Mike Woodson anything.
The lesson to be learned today, you don't have to give Mike Woodson anything. You can give you can if you want, but you don't have. No one's like obligated to give Mike Woodson anything. For that, you could tell Indiana to get on the line, but we have a lot of people we can put on the line, and we're going to do that next.
Man, hey, let's just gonna get on the line right now, man.
My patience is running thin. You're all running out of time. You was late to my practice, sir? Everybody on the line.
Come on.
Bars.
Everybody get on the line. Now, I don't know if I'm just in a mood this week, and I'm not going to lie. I'll admit I'm a little bit of a moody individual. I can be that way.
I can be too, especially in mornings.
Like, ironically enough, I think I may be moodier in the afternoons. I don't know. It's a me problem.
Interesting.
But I've got a few.
I like it. I like it. I'm here to support you, Coach.
Now, number one, if you watch that Iowa State-Houston game on Monday, a top 5 showdown, two of my favorite teams to watch in college basketball, and there are two teams. That game was the Spider-Man meme. Two of the best defenses in college basketball with a lot of good shooters, really good role players. Some of my favorite players in the sport in 2025, 2026 playing in this game. It's a neck-and-neck battle. In the last 3 minutes of the game, whenever Houston has the ball, there's a fan 3 rows in front of the camera with her arms up like this in her pom-pom, waving it the entire time, and you don't see half the court. And I'm sitting here watching this game like this would be a great finish if I could watch half of it. If I could watch what Houston does on offense, it would be great. I'm at the mercy of the broadcast crew right now. John Shambi, you're going to have to tell me what's going on right now because this lady has shoved a pom-pom in the middle of the camera and I can't see what's going on. Somebody at ESPN, don't know who, needs to be like, hey, can we just tell that person to put their arm down?
Production. Some PA somewhere has got to do that.
Somebody has to say, hey, man, yeah, this is great. Go wild, go nuts. This is great for the audio. But there are people that are trying to watch this thing, too. So for that lady and ESPN, because you are what you allow and you are what you tolerate, get on the line.
I listen, man. I'm here to support you today. If Coach, you need to go off and put several folks on the line, let's do it.
All right. Last night too. Now this, if you missed this is one of the funniest things I will say that has happened in sports this year. So Steven Jamerson plays for UCLA, is playing at Michigan State. Now, he apparently was a student manager at Michigan State and then decided, hey, I can still ball a little bit, goes to a small level, works his way up to playing at UCLA.
Okay.
Well, UCLA is getting their tail kicked last night in East Lansing. An absolute beatdown. And if you ask Mick Cronin, it's because of the travel. Well, take that up with your AD. They're the ones who put you in the Big Ten.
Money hungry.
Well, Steven Jamerson last night commits a very blatant, flagrant foul, right, on Carson Cooper. Late in the game, like clearly frustration, lame stuff, lame, cheap stuff. And Mick Cronin goes over there, tells him to come to the bench, and then points to somebody at the end of the bench, says, hey, take him to the locker room. Mick Cronin ejected his own player.
Kind of like it.
And it's kind of funny. So I'm not putting Mick Cronin on the line. I can do that any other time.
Plenty of time for that.
Because he is maybe the whiniest coach in college basketball. But Steven Jamerson, to commit a flagrant foul so bad that your coach felt the need to have to eject you and not the officiating crew, get on the line. Some really weak stuff there from the player, but then a funny thing from the coach too.
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't do this very quickly. The idea that 19 to 21, 22, 24, however old we are playing college athletics now, could be tired after the third game, second day of the season.
It's day 2.
I need everybody to come here. All of you.
Team effort.
Everybody. Not just the players. Paw, come here too.
Coaching
strength staff, you come over here too. I need everybody. Managers, come on over here. Everybody involved with Gamecock baseball, get on the line. Can't have that, man. That was intriguing to say the least. Just the sets of words. That being said, that's not the most local story because I believe we have a local story that we have.
Yeah, it's been a while since we talked about high school sports. Normally that's in the fall. We had the high school football show. But the playoffs in girls high school basketball started this week and in boys. And we had a game this week, yesterday. The Bruins of Belton Honiopath.
Down with BHP.
Shout out to BHP.
Yeah, you know me.
We're supposed to take on the Chapman Panthers in Inman, South Carolina.
The who?
The Chapman Panthers.
Okay, just make sure.
Where Debo Samuel went to high school. All Gamecock fans know that. The game got delayed, though. There was a little bit of a delay in the tip-off. I don't remember exactly what time the game was supposed to start, but it was supposed to start at 7 p.m. That was the delay time. Now, Elijah and Preston, can you guys guess why it got delayed? Maybe there could have been a sprinkler system malfunction in the gym. Maybe
lights might have gone in the gym. Maybe
lights
forgot to pay a bill.
Went out.
Bus broke down.
Bus broke down. Power went out. No. Belton BHP plays at Chapman. Mm-hmm. The bus driver takes the Lady Bruins to Chapin.
No.
Tough spot.
Oh no. Sorry, coach.
Which is not anywhere near Chapman or Inman.
Yeah.
70 miles.
Yeah. It's tough.
That's an hour.
It's a tough one.
At least.
Oh, I mean, that's a little more than an hour. Then take into account that's on a bus too. You can't necessarily just haul tail.
You gotta All right, well, here's the deal. So, bus driver, obviously.
Yep, come here.
Coaches.
Somebody's got to notice when you're not going in the right direction.
Coaches.
I wasn't expecting the players to. They're probably locked in, trying to prep for the road trip.
Not necessarily players. They may not have been there.
But if you're a coach, I mean, are you at least looking at the road and seeing signs like Columbia, 50 miles, Columbia, 35, Columbia, 20? Like, how do you not get that?
Coaches.
So for that,
bus driver.
Belton Honea Path bus driver,
get on the line.
And coaches. Everybody. Come on, man.
You get on the line as a team, you win as a team, you lose as a team. Hour number 3 coming up next, the early game, third and long hour. We're going to discuss what happened in Gainesville last night. That's next year in the early game.
Checking back in on the traffic. Still got that accident in Kershaw County on Main Street near US 601. Still have that accident in Richland County on Leesburg Road at I-77. Got an accident on I-20 eastbound and I-26 exit 64 in Lexington. We've got an accident reported in Georgetown on Highway 17 southbound at Burgess Road and Sunnyside Avenue. And then we've got an accident on Farrow Road, Highway 555 near Pisgah Church Road in Richland. And then, of course, the beloved long-term road construction in Conway, Columbia, that everybody loves.
The early game, third and long hour starts right now. I'm Elijah Campbell. He is Preston Thorne. He is Cale Wilson. And in the video production room here, Studio 803, our man Thomas is back with us, flipping the controls, making sure we look good on YouTube. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at The Game TV Radio. Or I found it pretty easy. If you just go to the search bar and just do 107.5 The Game, it'll pop up pretty easily, the way you know it a little better. It's pretty good in the search engine. But before we even get into the game last night, South Carolina falling again in SEC play, extending that losing streak to Florida and just the losing streak in general right now. Travis on the Firehouse Subs text line did say, because he does want to put one last person on the line here. We're going to let him. This is last one. The NCAA in general, giving a Montana player a 9th year to play football. What are we doing, NCAA?
Get on the line.
I tend to agree. I don't think anybody should have a decade stint playing college football. At some point, yes, I am very sympathetic to injuries. I get it. But sometimes you have to say that sucks.
Yeah, man. Tough breaks. It's how it goes. You had several opportunities, several bites at the apple. It didn't work. Move on.
Like, for instance, BYU in men's basketball this year has maybe their best roster in terms of just high-end talent they've probably ever had, right? They had a big three on that roster. Obviously, A.J. DeBanza is going to be a top 3 pick in the NBA draft, depending on whoever wins the lottery and how they feel about Darren Peterson's availability. They might take DeBanza number 1, right? I've said for a while he's the closest thing to the Tracy McGrady I've seen at the NBA or the college game. Robert Wright from Baylor was a freshman there last year. Really good point guard. Maybe never an NBA player because of his size, but he is a really good college player. And then Richie Saunders, who is one of the most improved players in college basketball in the last 3 years, was having an incredible season. Well, Richie Saunders tears his ACL this past week. He's out for the year, has no eligibility left, and hey, I'm going to try to sue to try to get my eligibility. He had an Instagram post where he says, I hate that my career has come to an end like this. Does it suck? Absolutely. I hate it for that kid. Absolutely hate it for that kid because the season he was having, like we're talking like all Big 12 first team type player this year. Them's the breaks sometimes.
I mean, we will get to Florida, but I'd be remiss if we didn't say this because Trinidad Chambliss was granted a 6th year. And when I did a little bit of digging to figure out why he was granted this 6th year, and it came about that he had sleep apnea, and therefore he wasn't able to rest and recover the way he needed to for the year that he was out, and that's why he was granted another year. I was like, I don't know, man. I don't think that's what we were I don't think that's the spirit of the law.
No, it's not. It's definitely not.
I think we're violating what this was intended to be, and we're moving. The goalposts have moved.
Sleep apnea?
As they say, we have lost the plot here.
Well, we've been losing that plot. Did his sleep apnea magically go away when he got to Ole Miss?
Well, you can get a better CPAP mask with the new NIL that you have now. Now I can get the real one. I can get maybe the one without the mask. I can get the one that I just put on my chest or whatever. I don't know, but I just was like, oh, that's what this was about. I was not aware. So, anyway, yeah, get on the line.
Yeah, absolutely, get on the line. I did not realize that was.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting story.
Interesting is definitely one way of putting it. Well, the loss last night for South Carolina is the 7th straight loss for the team this year. And they've lost some of these games in various ways, but in this losing streak, it is yet another loss to Florida. And yet another game, I would say back-to-back games, where you have played teams that are at the top of the SEC, and the real deficiencies from this team this year showed out, especially from a talent perspective. Second straight game where I don't think anything that you could do from a coaching standpoint is going to get you to win that game. I thought against Alabama, maybe the best course of action to guarding them is try to take away as many of the paint touches and take away as many of the shots at the rim, because Alabama's known for shooting a lot of threes, but they get to the rim better than anybody in college basketball. It's their whole shtick. I am convinced that if someone takes a mid-range jumper in Nate Oates' offense, they're getting publicly flogged, right? There's a pretty good deterrent for them to not take those shots. They get to the rim a lot. So I thought, okay, well, you play Alabama, you at least take away the shots of the rim, and you hope they miss from 3. You hope they shoot 34 threes, and maybe they only make 7 that night, and that's going to give you a chance to win. Well, they did a good job of taking away a lot of the shots at the basket. But Alabama made 14 three-pointers in that game. You lose by double figures, you're outmatched. Nothing you could do, I think, schematically is going to win you that game. Going into Florida last night, the best front court in college basketball. Ruben Chinyalu's probably the best rebounder in college basketball. Thomas Houck's probably your SEC Player of the Year. I think if I had a vote, I think Thomas Houck's my SEC Player of the Year.
Bad haircut, but he's good.
You got to work on that.
I don't know what's going on with that.
Can't have everything, I guess.
That's correct.
You have to have a deficiency somewhere.
Correct.
Alex Condon, maybe a back end of the first round pick in the NBA draft. That's the front court for Florida, right? He went for 20 and 10 last night. I don't know if there's any magical schematic thing you can do that was going to win you that game. And clearly, if you watch that game, there was one team that had a lot more talent that was just simply better, and nothing the other team was going to do was going to make a ton of difference. They could get it within single digits at a certain point. All right, cool. But if you go on KenPom and you look at the win probability chart, it never dipped below 94% for Florida. At no point did any computer or metric think South Carolina was in that game. And it's something we've talked about all year long, but they've lost games against teams that are in their neighborhood. They've lost some close games, and they've gotten blown out where it's then the effort is in question. I'm not questioning the effort from the last two games at all. I thought they played pretty hard, and I think in the first half, that Alabama game, I actually would venture to say I thought they played well. Not great, they played well.
Two distinctions.
I thought they played well. But at the end of the day, you're still more than double digits away from either of these teams, and I think that really puts into perspective just how far back they are compared to a lot of their conference peers.
Yeah, so that's the thing that's, I think, most disheartening when you watch this particular game is that we don't have to have the effort conversation anymore. And though it was annoying to have the effort conversation, that at least was a little bit soothing because you could say in the back of your mind, well, if we just play harder, then maybe we'll have a shot. Well, when you look out there and you see them playing hard, and then you even said you see them playing well, so you're playing hard and you're playing to your level of capabilities, and that still ain't enough, that's when you get disheartened. That's when you become a little disillusioned because I ain't got it. We ain't got enough to figure out how to beat this team, and that is where you have to really start asking and answering some tough questions about the state of the program, the state of the roster construction, because you're asking players to do things that they've never done before, and they're not in positions where they can win because they just can't get over the hump.
And it's one of those things, too, that I love looking at when I'm breaking down basketball teams. Like, it's the dorkiest thing I do. Like, when I'm watching a game, like...
Nerd alert!
I'll watch a game, and I'll have, a bunch of different pages pulled up. So I'm trying to figure out what your tendencies are, what it is that... what gives you an edge, right? There's so many things in basketball that make a difference. And, again, I am the biggest subscriber to the four-factor theory as humanly possible. And I think if you can do one of those four things incredibly well, it's going to give you a chance to win every game. And especially if it's effective field goal shooting or offensive rebound percentage. They are not really good in either. They're outside the top 200 in both of those things this year. Defensively, they're outside the top 200 in opponent turnover percentage, so they're not turning their opponents over, so they're not getting an edge there. And they're a below average outside the top 265 when it comes to defensive rebound percentage. So you're not keeping other teams off the glass. You're not getting your missed shots. The other teams are getting their missed shots. You're not shooting really well, and your opponents are shooting around average, around NCAA average. But then when we go to conference play, you are dead last in a lot of these things. Really, the only thing that you're not last in that I would consider that you are well above average in is just not turning the ball over. You're last in offensive efficiency. You're last in defensive efficiency. It's at a point now where if we're going to run this back next year, there is something that has to change radically when it comes to how this roster is built and who are the type of players that you're bringing in. Because I don't know if the rising sophomores, the freshmen that got a lot of playing time this year, are going to be good enough to be able to help you win at this level. And the last 2 years, you've whiffed on transfer portal targets. Even I know the money thing is real, right? That's a totally real thing. And if you're not spending anywhere near what your peers are spending, there is a reasonable expectation to be kind of like this. But at the same time, you're still whiffing on a lot of players that are supposed to come in here and be not role players, but significant players on this team.
I know, and again, yes, there is a baseline level of anything that you need to compete, right? Whether it's like test scores or combine numbers. There's a baseline level. If we get to that baseline level, now then what's the question? Then what's the solution? Because it's like, man, I don't know, man. You have to believe that if you're always going to be under-resourced, because, hey, South Carolina is never going to be the most resourced team in any sport, but especially men's basketball. Mm-hmm. So knowing that, what's your plan now? Now that we understand this, how are you going to move and make something out of what you are tasked with? Yes, I need the baseline level, but after that, what's your strategy for competing now? And so it can't just be we need more money, because that's not going to be the eventual answer.
Is it going to make that big of a jump? Like that's the thing.
Right, and also you talked about the idea of Kentucky. Kentucky has all the money.
$22 million,
and
allegedly.
What's the results right now?
They got beat by Georgia last night, and they're sitting at 8-5 in the conference.
So
don't think that's what the fan base wanted. Is it a good season for an average for any basketball program to be 8-5 in the SEC? Yeah, that's good. When you spent that much money on it, you probably expect to be a little better than 8-5 in the league.
So money is, I mean, just like in regular life, like money is an answer. Anybody that says, money's not the answer, they're not telling the truth. Money's good. Money gives you options. Money allows you to move around. Money is
margin
great.
For error.
Air condition. All these cool things that money can provide for you. But no, it's not going to be the ultimate final solution. There has to be something on top of that. And that's the conversations that are going to need to be had with Lamont as you move into the offseason, moving up. If we get you to this baseline, what's your plan?
I think Major League Baseball is maybe one of our best parallels because it's a non-salary cap sport, and there's certainly a class of the haves and the have-nots. Guess who just picked up Kyle Tucker and is probably going to be the favorite to is going to be the favorite to win a third straight World Series? The Los Angeles Dodgers. Why? Because they have more money than all of us could ever dream of having. Right? They have an endless pile of resources, and they use them well. One of my favorite books ever and movies, Moneyball, an entire story about how, hey, look, you can't compete with everybody else that you play in your league with financially when it comes to player acquisition, but where do you find your edge? The Tampa Bay Rays don't have all the money in the world. For the love of God, they're playing in a minor league park because their old crappy dome got eviscerated in a hurricane, and I don't know if they're ever going back to that dome. They don't even know where they're going to be playing in 3 years, right? Who knows what the Tampa Bay Rays are going to be doing, or if they're going to be the Nashville Rays.
I can tell you what they're going to be doing. They're going to be competing.
And they always compete.
They're always right there. Well, it might be a year or two later, but they're always going to be right back.
And you know why? Because they found an edge somewhere. Maybe it's analytics. Maybe it's, I do know they have one of the largest scouting departments in Major League Baseball, and there's scouts that have been there for years, right? Everybody, when it comes to building the rosters on the same page, what they're looking for very specific things. They're looking for value. And that's where they find their edge in a sport where the ultimate edge is money. And the Tampa Bay Rays still compete. Nobody in any sport really punches above their weight class on a year in, year out basis than a team like the Tampa Bay Rays. What can this edge be for this program? Is now, because I'm getting to the point where I'm really tired of having the money conversation, because you got it or you don't. And if you got it and you're not going to spend it or don't. Find a way to get an edge somewhere to where you're not constantly churning out seasons. Because if this happens again next year, then that's 3 straight seasons of having these type of results that are just unacceptable in the league.
Yeah, now I think that's sort of the bottom line, man. You got to figure out what your edge is and then attack it aggressively. Figure out who you are and go get that thing. And I thought that's what the Lamont Paris era was. We seem to have an identity coming into this season. Have not played up to that identity. I'd be interested to see if when this gets run back, what is going to be the identity and how do you make it work with the resources that you have? How you stretch them resources. Sometimes you got to put a little bit of water in the tomato sauce and shake it around to get, you know what I'm saying? Like,
get everything out of that jar.
Get everything out. Squeeze that toothpaste as much as you need, man. You got to get it all out.
Serial offender of the squeezing the toothpaste.
Squeeze it. Roll it. Push it
down.
Get
the rubber band on it.
Whatever you got to do, that's what your task is.
And that's the absolute must this year, because it's not like you're going to wake up and magically have $15 million to spend.
It's not going to happen
on the team. So whatever that edge is, you have to be able to find that. But coming up next, there's a team that did get a win last night, and Preston Thorne says it was the biggest win of the year. And we'll tell you why coming up next.
Checking back in on the traffic here. Got an accident reported in Richland County at Leesburg Road at I-77. Got an accident still going on in Georgetown County at Highway 17 southbound at Burgess Road and Sunnyside Avenue. And then we've got an accident in Irmo on Hollingshed Road at Jesse Derrick Road.
Went to Spartanburg yesterday, the home of the Hubtown Spartanburgers, if you will, and took care of business against Wofford 8-2. According to Preston Thorne, it is once again the biggest win of the year.
Hey, listen, man. Play around and drop 2 games in a row. One to the Horizon League champs and one to a mid-major in your own state, and see how well that goes.
I want to go on a limb and say not very well.
It would not have gone well. So, again, this will be a reoccurring bit because this team is on a day-to-day referendum based on last year and based on the early results from this year and the press conference about them being tired. They're on a day-to-day evaluation. Every day is game day. What do they say? The rent's due today. Every day the rent, whatever
way you want to phrase it.
Whatever, this is it. So, yes, it was a huge win, and they're going to have to keep stacking these in order for people to get some space away from the bad feelings that they had from last year and also some of the questions that they already started this year. So this was a great start, a good job of taking care of business. No obligation to make this close. They handle business. You want to see some things improve, and I think the main thing that we've seen taken away early in this season is that there might be some pitching on this team.
I think we've tapped into that a little bit.
There might be that might be something that's a trend that we follow that's early.
Yes.
But that's something that we might be seeing.
Baseball's a large sample size sport, so we need to see more sample size, especially against better competition. But I do find it encouraging that you've gotten really good starting pitching. I found it encouraging that Connor Ciccoli last night gave you 5 innings of work, right? Especially, I think that's really all I can ask from a midweek starter is, can you get me 5 innings and we don't have to exhaust a lot of our bullpen options? That way we have the arms as fresh as we can go and a full bank of them by the time we get into the weekend, especially once you get into SEC play. You need somebody who can just take care of those innings. And I thought Ciccoli did a good job of taking care of those innings. And then we saw what we got from the starting pitching staff. Really solid ERA work over the weekend. The big thing that kept you from sweeping Northern Kentucky was just leaving runners on base. And last night you score 8 runs. Tyler Bach had a big RBI in that game, another player that I've been keeping a close eye on here in the early part of the season. But I wanted to hear from Coach Maneri too about the bats, right? He said the bats looked a little bit better last night. I would agree. Why is that the case? Well, this is Cut 3, Kale. This is Coach Paul Maneri talking about the offensive performance looking better. Yes, it'll be Cut 3.
Wow, I thought it was, we worked so hard yesterday at practice with challenging the hitters, and we had a pretty good drill that we worked on yesterday for having players hitting with the guys in scoring position, and we put a lot of pressure on them. And I thought they responded well in the drill yesterday, and then I tell you, we hit an awful lot of balls hard, I thought, with guys in scoring position tonight, and it was really great to see. A couple of the outs, like Lizama's line drive and even Harmon's hard ground ball to second base with 2 outs, and, they hit those balls hard. Once the ball leaves the bat, you can't control what happens unless you've hit it over the fence, So if it's caught or it's right at somebody or they make a great play, you got to be proud of yourself, because if you hit balls hard, and especially with runners in scoring position, low line drives instead of lazy, easy fly balls or weak ground balls, then sooner or later they're going to fall for you, and that happened for us tonight. I was really, really proud of the guys. And even though Scobies wasn't with the guy on base, you know, for him to deal with what happened the other day, the way the game ended, and, you know, I was worried about him. You know, he might be tripping over his lip a little bit, you know, pouting and, you know, feeling sorry for himself. But he didn't. He played a really solid game tonight and then hit that home run at the end. So, you know, you can't do anything about the past. All you can do is go forward. And I think Scobie showed a lot of character tonight.
And honestly, that clip right there and that explanation you heard from Paul is one of the reasons why, like, baseball stat dorks really go crazy over something like barrel rate. Right? Because if you're barreling balls and you're making really good contact on a lot of those pitches with runners in scoring position, sometimes luck happens. Sometimes a left fielder makes a great diving play to get you out with 2 outs and you leave 2 runners on base on second and third, right? And that happens. That's baseball. Like, that's a quintessential baseball thing to happen. That's why even some of your best hitters in Major League Baseball are only getting a hit 27% of the time, right? There's a reason why that sort of thing happens. And to have some of the struggles of leaving guys on base in that first series, and then last night you barreled balls really well, and they just so happen to fall where fielders aren't. And for someone like KJ Scobie, like, I think that was a good example at the end to be able to get a hold of one and send it out. Even if there was no runners on, you're again barreling the ball and giving yourself a better chance of the ball falling where there isn't a fielder.
Yeah, and then it's sort of the same concept, I guess, in basketball of, like, just getting yourself a good shot. It's a good look. You take the shot.
Shot quality.
Sometimes it goes in. Sometimes it rims out. Like,
like Flau'jae Johnson on the free throw line?
Yeah, like, all you can do is set yourself up, do all the right things, and then let fate take care of it. I did really appreciate that explanation, and that's what you want to see more of, especially in these midweek games. You want to see them taking the steps to prepare themselves for the more aggressive competition that's on the way.
And that's like the mentality you kind of have to have on a game-to-game basis, really, no matter who it is you're playing against, whoever the pitching staff is if I'm up here at the plate or I'm protecting a count, whatever it is, if I can just get good contact on a ball, right? The last thing you want, like with runners in scoring position, is a soft dribbler to the shortstop and then bam, double play. Right? If you have a runner on first, that's like the worst thing you can have in that situation. There's contact, and then there's really good contact. And I think if you're up in that barrel rate a little bit, and maybe the results aren't there right early, right? Like, you have a couple of games where you leave runners on, but you're still confident with the type of contact your team is making, then eventually that will fall back in your favor. So that's why the thing to really watch with this baseball team now is when you do get runners on, what type of contact is this team getting at the plate? And early in the season, when you're playing Northern Kentucky, Wofford, or today when they take on Gardner-Webb, something to watch for is if you do get an early walk in the inning, what type of contact are you getting in the batters behind that walk, right? And there's outs you can live with and outs that you can't. If you can eliminate the outs that you can't live with, then at least your expectation level for runs in a game is going to go up. And if you're getting the pitching that you have, that could be promising. Not here guaranteeing season-long success, but that can be promising if that's a formula that you apply the rest of the year.
Yeah, and the last part that he said about KJ getting over the last game, moving forward, being able to do that, that's all baseball is. That's the essential part of what baseball is. You're going to have to come back. You're going to have another at-bat. You're going to have another game. You're going to have another opportunity. And as a veteran, he's going to need to be able to do that throughout this season on several opportunities, because if the team is going to be successful, he's going to have to be successful.
Yeah, he's one of the most important players on this team, and there's a reason why he was looked at as one of the most important returners from last year's team. Out of all the guys on last year's team that you wanted to keep for this year, there's a reason he was on that list as one of those guys that you wanted to keep. So keeping him engaged and making sure one bad game does not turn into a string of bad games is mildly important. We talked a lot about conditioning too, about being tired. Well, today you have to play again, right? You have to travel back from Spartanburg. You got to play again today. One thing to watch for in that game is how well does this team respond. That's something I'm certainly interested in. And of course, you can hear that game today here on the game in the Gamecock Sports Network pregame, going to start at 3:45. But coming up next, we have a continuation of our series when it comes to the All-Star games. Do they still matter? Part 2, is it the possible elixir to All-Star game boredom? One league has figured out a way to make this thing a lot more interesting, and we'll tell you who that is coming up next here in the early game. Now, fixing all-star games may not be on the top of your priority list, but if you are like millions of Americans and many South Carolinians that are dealing with income or business tax issues, well, I have a solution for you. At least a really strong suggestion. And that is to call my friends at the Ecton Law Firm. John Ecton and his team, and give them a call at 803-771-9800, where you can talk to his local team that's been resolving these type of issues, whether it be income or business tax issues. They've been doing this for a long time, and they have proven local solutions that have helped thousands of families and businesses just like yours escape that IRS maze. So don't keep losing sleep over those tax issues. Go ahead and take the correct course of action today by calling them at 803-771-9800. And you can always visit them too online at ectonlawfirm.com. That's ECTON lawfirm.com.
Checking in on the traffic here. We've still got that accident in Richland County on Leesburg Road at I-77. Still got that accident in Lexington County at I-20 westbound at Longs Pond Road on exit 51. Still got that accident in Georgetown on Highway 17 southbound at Burgess Road and Sunnyside Avenue. Still got that accident in Irmo on Hollingshed Road at Jesse Derrick Road. And then we got another accident reported at Fort Jackson Boulevard at Divine Street.
All-Star games, are they obsolete? That's what we've been trying to tackle this week here on the early game. It's part 2 of our series of Are All-Star games obsolete? We talked about the NBA All-Star game being better than expected.
Yes. And I think it's very important to note that, because if it would have been terrible, they would have been everywhere, and a lot of producers / newsrooms had to scrap whatever they were going to say because it was actually serviceable.
It was serviceable. Yeah.
Maybe even better than that. But that's not what a lot of people want to talk about.
Again, if you didn't hear us yesterday talking about it, I equated All-Star games to like rom-coms, right? And the whole point of them is to be closer to Hitch or You Got Mail or any of your favorite rom-coms, and make them less like, I don't know, Jack and Jill.
Good call.
Jiggly. Anything like that, right? They have to at least be serviceable in their genre. And I thought that was serviceable in their genre. Very rarely, though, does an all-star game or an all-star level competition have like true cinematic value, right? Where instead of it being closer to You Got Mail, it's like There Will Be Blood, right? Or any great movie that you can remember here. The NHL kind of tapped into that a little bit. And I think what they've done, now this year they're not doing any all-star festivities because of the Winter Olympics. Happens in the middle of their season, so they take a 2-week break from league competition to let their players play in the Olympics. Well, last year they did the 4 Nations face-off. They completely eliminated like the traditional NHL All-Star game, and it was just the 4 Nations face-off. There were 4 countries. It was like the U.S., Canada, I think it was Sweden, and I forget who the other one was. It might have been like Finland. I can't remember who the 4th team was, but it didn't matter because it was USA and Canada had 2 really good games in pool play and then in the final. And you had fights. You had a lot of genuine competition and patriotism displayed on 2 different sides too. Like there felt like there was a lot on the line, and they got good viewership numbers. People were locked in on it, and it became a really good news story. And that's what they turned their All-Star game into. And I have a feeling next year they might just end up doing the same thing.
Yeah, they're going to try and run it back because they had something that was really important. Now, obviously, when you do this, you can't ignore the greater landscape that's happening. Obviously, United States and Canada was kind of beefing a little bit.
Yep.
So that was a thing. Mysteriously, if you follow hockey, you have Canada, the United States, Sweden, and Finland. Who's missing from this equation where they have a lot of great hockey players from? I don't know.
Yeah.
They produce a lot of hockey players, somehow not involved in this whole situation. Fine, no problem. But it does create a level of buy-in from the crowd because nationalism always wins. Patriotism is always going to be a banger. The opportunity to say USA, who's going to pass that up?
In a hockey rink, like we're always trying to recreate 1980. Like at some point deep down inside, we always want to relive that magic.
So you have the buy-in from the fans, and then obviously the players, for those same reasons, are going to want to compete. And so, yeah, it worked. It worked last year. I'm not sure if I don't know. Now, they run the risk of like, hey, let's just do it again. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But for 1 year, they got it right.
And that's something I think the NBA tried to copy a little bit. Now, it's different because there were 3 teams involved in it with their format, and it was 2 teams of American-born players and then a team of international. Now, the way the talent spread out in hockey a little bit, there are a lot of great Canadian players, and the Canadian team is always pretty loaded year in and year out. The United States is getting a lot better, and I think we've seen in the Olympics so far, the United States has kind of really closed that gap. But you have a lot of great players that are also from Finland and Sweden, right? Like all NHL players, guys who win awards, right? Like there are a lot of really good players and a multitude of countries that can make up teams of really good individual players. The NBA, it's kind of maybe a little more sporadic, right? Like maybe the 3rd starter on Serbia is someone like Bogdan Bogdanovic. That may sound like a name I made up. It's a real player. He's a role player in the NBA, right? That might be their 3rd best player, which is why Team USA wins every year. But if you break up Team USA into 2, and then you take all the best players internationally and have them play to try to spoil the party, then you maybe have like this hero-villain idea going on, which I think I was really kind of hoping the international team made it to the final. That way there'd be a little more juice for that final game. But then you have like, hero and spoiler. and you also have, a little bit of an element of patriotism, but I think that does actually play in something like this, especially when it's different from what you've always been doing. Like, I think there's a market for all-star games and these type of things in the middle of a season, like the NBA and MLB and NHL do, that you can still bring in a lot of interest. Major League Baseball maybe never has to change theirs because, again, interleague plays changed a lot of things, but there may be a time where you're not going to see Paul Skeens pitch against Aaron Judge, but you really want to see it. There's still that novelty there, but it's definitely worn off in the NHL and the NBA, and I think maybe tapping into a patriotic element of that and adding a little more emotional stakes to the game is better for having a more entertaining product than it probably has been the way we've been doing things traditionally.
Right, you got to give everybody a reason to want to get in here and get invested in this thing. The international angle is really cool for the NBA. The slight issue, though, is that hockey's not ours. And so it's okay if another country is better than us in hockey because it's not ours. Basketball is ours. And the fear is that eventually the international team...
We're getting closer every year, buddy.
Exactly.
We're getting closer every year.
That is the main fear. And that's why I can understand how the NBA might be like, I don't know if we want to do this because... that it might be a bridge too far. But I do like this, and it sort of happened, but I think they might want to dial into this, is the OGs versus the Young Bucks.
And that's kind of what they did with...
It kind of happened, but I think they need to go hard on that.
Yes.
Like 7 years plus, 7 years because those two groups of dudes will play hard against each other for different reasons. And I think you need to pit that sort of... listen, it all play the hits. Nationalism, ageism, it works.
Yes.
I don't like you old. It's a perfect storm.
Anthony Edwards, of course, wants to bust the tails of the older players in the league. Absolutely.
Right.
That's a proving ground at that point. And the older players are probably like, we still run this league.
There's something there. There's something there for that. But they are working on tweaking it. And I think that format is coming together. But I generally... East versus West or conference versus conference, I don't know if that's going to play out in any sport. I think that concept is sort of over.
Because from a fan standpoint too, I had a friend, we play NBA 2K together all the time, and he would try to play with the East All-Stars. And he goes, "That's my favorite team," and I'm like, "Oh, get out of here! Get out of here! No, we're not doing that. Like you're not walking around with an Eastern Conference shirt on, right? Like you're not, cheering for a basketball team one game a year. Like, get out of here." And he was just, he was being silly. But you know what a lot of fans my age are really into watching? Their favorite players from growing up. Because guess what? LeBron, like I was telling Mira this on Sunday night. I said, tonight LeBron James plays in the NBA All-Star Game. That sentence was true when I was in the 4th grade. It is true tonight. And you know what? I like watching him in the All-Star Game. One of my favorite players. So I enjoy watching him in the All-Star Game. Kevin Durant, watched him in a lot of NBA All-Star games. It's a generational thing, right? And then maybe a lot of younger fans are saying, hey, my first star that I fell in love with is Anthony Edwards. And then it kind of gets to grow from there. Then you have a little bit of a generational battle between the two, too, that I think something that the NFL maybe can replicate in a flag football game. And they're never going to put pads on again. But that maybe adds a little more intrigue.
Yeah, I think there's something in where you're able to keep the older fans and bring along the younger fans also. And so there's different ways that you can do that. There is something for that. But if I had to be a doctor prescribing, I'd say for all sports leagues, the idea of conference versus conference or East versus West, I think that's dead.
Yeah, I think that element.
I think we've moved past that, but there is some ground to still explore.
We've maybe found a winning proposition to changing All-Star games. Who are our winners for today's show? We'll tell you coming up next.
Can't do it. I want winners. Winners.
And we got winners for you, Coach. Every day we give you our winners for the day's show, brought to you by the Golden Spur. And I want to give a shout out to my man Troy Jeffcoat in the YouTube stream, because Troy just brought up a winner for me, because we're talking about the All-Star games and like the hyper competitiveness that you can bring out in All-Star games. And he says, I remember when there was league pride in the MLB All-Star game, it really mattered who won. Pete Rose running over Ray Fosse is one of my favorite memories from the MLB All-Star game. So I want to give a winner to Ray Fosse, because that poor guy, that ended his career essentially. And all he is known for in his Major League Baseball career, now that time has passed, is him just getting absolutely trucked by Pete Rose in an All-Star game.
Yeah, that's a tough spot, man. Pete, I don't know if you were necessarily playing in the spirit of what this All-Star game.
Poor Ray Fosse, man. That was terrible.
I would put somebody else in that same club. I had to look his name up, because I was just going to call him the punter, but I'm going to give that man his name. Brian Moorman, the punter who was annihilated by Sean Taylor in the All-Star game.
You want to know the only reason I remember Brian Moorman as the punter for the Buffalo Bills is because Sean Taylor decapitated him in a Pro Bowl.
I don't know if you were supposed to do that, Sean. R.I.P. That's not the spirit of this game. Everybody's playing on 6. You playing on 10. I don't know. It's a good point. I'm going to give a winner because we made a bus driver get on the line, but I'm going to give a winner to all the bus drivers who get teams from space to space safely on a daily basis. Not only do they get your kids to school every single day, but when your athletic teams have to travel, they have to travel on those stinky buses with all of those ungodly smells and stupid cheers and rants and whatever it is. So bus drivers, you the real MVPs.
I'm trying to think if I'm making a list of just the top 5 worst everyday smells. Oh. Like, I mean, you could put some really bad smells on the list, but that's not an everyday thing, right? Obviously, if you're of school age and you take the bus to school, or you are playing a sport and you're taking that school bus to and from certain games in different towns, that becomes an everyday smell. So I'll qualify that. If I had to make a list of the top 5 worst everyday smells, that's like 2 or 3.
It's so unique.
It used to give me headaches. Riding on the bus used to give me headaches as a kid. Now, granted, I get a lot of them as an adult anyway, so maybe this isn't just something isolated from my childhood, but I absolutely despised riding the bus. And not because like, hey, I didn't like the kids on the bus. I had friends on the bus. It was great, right? And the wheels on them went round and round. But the smell on it, I just hated every single day. I think it's something everybody has experienced at least once in their life, is just being absolutely grossed out by the smell of the school bus.
And your bus drivers have to do that all the time, so all the salute.
Time. Brave soldiers in our society.
Absolutely.
Another winner for today's show, cheating scandals. Because we have another one in the Winter Olympics with the Canadian curling team. Mm-hmm. Look, it wasn't enough that we were shooting acid into parts that have no business having acid shot into, but now we are double tapping the rock over the hog line. We are violating the sacred hog line in curling and then lying about it when being called out, to the point where a game which cheating is so, like, the sport is so self-regulating. Curling is such a hobby sport. It is so self-regulated and self-policed, and has been doing so pretty well since 1998, when this became a Winter Olympic sport. We now have to have it to where the Swedish team thought it was necessary to have a camera at the hog line to prove that Canada was cheating, and they caught them with it. And now we're probably going to have all cameras next to the hog line, which is a sentence I never thought I would utter in my life.
Can you repeat that sentence? The Canadians had to double touch on the hog line one more time, please,
sir? The Canadians double touched after the hog line. Now, you can double touch before the rock gets to the hog line, but once the rock passes the hog line, no touch zone, baby. None. Not one. Don't poke it. Don't twist the handle. And now here's where it gets creative, too. They have technology in these rocks now that it senses if you touch the handle after the hog line, but it doesn't sense it if you touch the rock. So what the Canadian team's been doing, they would release it at the handle before the hog line, and then it gets past the hog line, and then they're just taking like 2 fingers and poking at it a little bit. Mm-hmm. But it's obvious.
there anything sacred anymore?
Nothing is sacred, Cale Wilson.
Yeah, I'm just here to tell you, man, anytime you get people competing, there's going to be people that find as winner, the great Brad Loing, with one of my favorite sayings, tell me the rules because I won't break them, but I will bend the hell out of them.
And, maybe if Canada was better at bending rules instead of straight up breaking them, this wouldn't be as controversial as it is. I'm no curling expert. I found out what the hog line was 4 days ago, and that they called it the hog line. And I still have no reason why the hell they call it the hog line. I find it really funny.
And it's green.
It is green, yes. Not hog colored.
Yeah, that is very, very interesting. But again, I would say if there's a competition to be had, and one of my favorite things is people cheating in things that doesn't matter to anybody else except that group of people.
Yes.
It really matters to the curling community. And I'm sure if you go on curling Reddit right now, it is exploded.
Oh, the folks are hot.
I love that. I love insular communities that get upset about something that no one else cares about. But for them, this is a scandal. This is huge.
Yeah. Oh, like my brother-in-law is a big disc golfer. He's really good at it. That's his time away from the kids is to go play disc golf. I can imagine how mad he would feel if somebody he was playing disc golf with on a regular basis just decided to flub their score a little bit.
I love it. It's one of my favorite things is when a small community gets upset about something. We all have nothing. We know nothing about this.
But, part of the whole curling scandal, it's wild, is it's a self-policing sport. Winners, self-policing. Mick Cronin kicking out his own player in the game. A flagrant one was assessed, meaning he could still play, but Mick Cronin said, you know what? You don't get to. Get to the locker room and then get on the line. Comical.
Solid.
The funniest way that game could have ended last night, because it was non-competitive. Michigan State just evaporated UCLA. So self-policing, always a winner.
I think I'm going to go today and spend some time on some rabbit holes of scandals in out-of-bounds sports, in weird sports. That's what I'm going to do today.
So you already know tomorrow is going to be a lot of fun. Tyler Head, Jack Veltri, they're next.
Appreciate it.
Because we don't know, we're all pieced out, so 2 weeks.
Yeah, I remember.
Preston here for our folks at AAA Heat in the Air. Listen, you could have very much used them a couple of weeks ago when it was super cold, but guess what? The summer is on the way. And the folks from AAA Heating and Air offer guaranteed financing for any qualified organizations, making it easier to upgrade or replace your commercial HVAC systems without any upfront cost. And also, they also offer 12 months with no interest. That gives you time to plan, budget, and breathe easy while your new